Clinton Enoch just wanted to finish his last delivery and get home to pick up his 6-year-old son, Finn. But when he stepped into the marble foyer of billionaire Adelaide Sterling's mansion, he froze. Between the crystal chandeliers and polished columns, a massive portrait hung under a spotlight. The face staring back at him was his wife, Astrid, who had died 3 years ago. But the nameplate beneath read, Callista Hale. Why did Adelaide have a painting of his wife, and why had Astrid been living under a completely different identity? The apartment on 7th Street had thin walls and a radiator that clanged through winter nights. Clinton Enoch could hear his neighbors arguing through the plaster, could smell whatever they cooked seeping under the door. At 35, his body already ached in ways that reminded him he was getting older faster than he should. His hands were calloused from loading boxes, his back stiff from hours hunched over a steering wheel. The delivery company paid just enough to keep the lights on and food on the table, but never enough to feel secure. He worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7 when they called him in for emergency runs. The other drivers complained about the routes, about the weight of the packages, about customers who treated them like furniture. Clinton never complained. He showed up on time, did the work, went home. That was the deal. That was how you survived when you had a kid depending on you. Finn was everything. 6 years old, with his mother's dark eyes and a gap-toothed smile that could break through Clinton's worst days. The boy was in 1st grade now, learning to read, bringing home drawings of stick figures that he taped proudly to the refrigerator. Clinton picked him up from the neighbor's apartment every evening at 6. Helped him with homework at their small kitchen table, made dinner from whatever was cheapest that week, pasta, rice, chicken when it was on sale. They talked about Finn's mother sometimes, not often, because it hurt too much. Astrid Constance had died 3 years ago in an apartment fire across town. The official report said faulty wiring. An old building. A tragedy. Clinton had been at work when it happened. He got the call from the fire department, raced across the city, arrived to find nothing but smoke and yellow tape, and investigators taking notes. They found her body in the bedroom. The funeral was small. Clinton couldn't afford much. He kept a locked wooden box on the top shelf of his closet. Astrid had left it behind, something she'd asked him never to open. He honored that promise even after she died. Even when grief made him desperate for anything that still felt like her. The lock stayed closed. Some promises you kept forever. Adelaide Sterling's name appeared in the business section of newspapers Clinton never had time to read. She was 42, relentlessly successful, the kind of person who commanded rooms just by entering them. Her hair fell in perfect waves. Blonde and expensive. She ran Sterling Global, a financial and medical conglomerate that had buildings in 12 countries. People whispered about her. Ice Queen, ruthless, brilliant. She had a wall in her mansion dedicated to portraits of people who mattered to her. That was what the staff said. Anyway, Clinton had never been inside. He was a delivery driver. She was a billionaire. Their worlds did not touch until they did. The order came through on a Wednesday evening. Rush delivery to the Sterling estate. Package marked urgent. Clinton took it because the overtime meant he could buy Finn new shoes, the kind that fit properly instead of the ones 2 sizes too big that he'd have to grow into. He drove across town as the sun set, watching the neighborhood shift from cramped apartments to gated properties with security cameras. The Sterling mansion sat behind iron gates and manicured hedges. Clinton buzzed the intercom, gave his name, waited. The gates swung open. He drove up a curved driveway lined with lights that looked like they cost more than his entire year's salary. The house loomed ahead, all glass and stone, glowing from within. He parked, grabbed the package, walked to the front door. A security guard met him there, a man in a dark suit with an earpiece. He gestured for Clinton to follow him inside. Normally, drivers left packages at the entrance, but this one required a signature. Adelaide Sterling's signature. Specifically, the foyer took Clinton's breath away. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine. A chandelier that dripped crystals like frozen rain. Curved staircases that swept upward toward shadows. And on the far wall, under a focused spotlight, a portrait that made his heart stop. It was Astrid. Her face, her exact face, painted in oils that captured every detail he'd memorized during their years together. The curve of her jaw, the way her hair fell over one shoulder, the slight asymmetry of her smile. But the nameplate beneath the portrait, engraved in brass, read Callista Hale. Clinton's hands went numb. The package slipped from his fingers, hit the marble with a dull thud. He stared at the painting, his vision narrowing, his pulse hammering in his ears. This was not possible. This was not real. Astrid had been dead for 3 years. Astrid had been his wife. Astrid had never mentioned anyone named Callista Hale. Footsteps echoed behind him. He turned to see Adelaide Sterling herself descending the staircase. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than his car. Her expression neutral, controlled. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, her eyes flicking from Clinton to the dropped package to the portrait. "Is there a problem?" Her voice was cool, professional, the tone of someone used to solving problems by delegating them. Clinton's throat closed. He forced words out, heard them crack. "Why do you have a painting of my wife?" Adelaide's expression did not change. She took 2 steps closer, her heels clicking on the marble. "Excuse me." "That portrait." Clinton pointed with a shaking hand. "That's my wife, Astrid Constance. She died 3 years ago. Why do you have her picture in your house?" Adelaide looked at the painting, then back at Clinton. Her face remained perfectly composed. "That is not your wife. That woman is Callista Hale. She worked for my foundation." "No." Clinton shook his head, the motion too fast, desperate. "That's Astrid. I know my wife's face. I know." "You're mistaken." Adelaide's tone sharpened. "I don't know who you are or what you think you're doing, but Callista Hale was an employee of Sterling Global Foundation. She had nothing to do with you." The security guard stepped forward, his hand moving toward Clinton's arm. Clinton jerked back, his mind spinning. This could not be happening. This was a nightmare, a sick joke, something broken in his head from too many sleepless nights. But Adelaide was watching him now with something other than annoyance. Her eyes narrowed slightly, studying his face. The genuine shock written there. She raised one hand, stopping the guard. "Wait." She moved closer to Clinton, close enough that he could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. "You really believe that's your wife?" "I know it is." Clinton's voice was barely a whisper. Adelaide was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to the guard. "Leave us." The guard hesitated. Adelaide gave him a look that could cut glass. He left. She turned back to Clinton. "Tell me her name again." "Astrid Constance. We were married 5 years. She died in a fire 3 years ago. We have a son. His name is Finn." The words tumbled out, each one feeling like pulling glass from a wound. Adelaide's expression flickered. Just for a second, something cracked through the ice. What did she do for work? She worked for a non-profit, community outreach. She never talked about it much. Clinton realized, as he said it, how little he actually knew. Astrid had been private about her job, always saying it was boring administrative work, nothing worth discussing. Adelaide walked to the portrait, stood beneath it, looked up at Callista Hale's painted face. She came to work for Sterling Global Foundation 4 years ago. Brilliant analyst. She uncovered financial irregularities in our international aid programs. She was about to go public with a report when she disappeared. Clinton's legs felt weak. Disappeared. 3 years ago. I assumed she'd been scared off or bought off by whoever was running the corruption scheme. I looked for her. Couldn't find her. Adelaide's voice was quieter now, almost human. "If what you're saying is true, if Callista Hale and Astrid Constance are the same person, then she didn't run. She was murdered." The word hung in the air between them. Murdered. Not an accident, not faulty wiring. Murdered. Clinton drove home in a daze, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. He parked outside his building, sat in the car for 10 minutes, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying to understand how the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd buried, could have been someone else entirely. He picked up Finn from the neighbor's apartment. The boy chattered about his day, About the science project they were starting. About the girl in his class who could touch her nose with her tongue. Clinton barely heard him. He made dinner automatically, moving through the motions. Spaghetti, garlic bread, Finn's favorite. After dinner, after Finn was in bed, Clinton stood in his bedroom closet and stared at the wooden box on the top shelf. His hands shook as he reached for it. The box was heavier than he remembered. Solid oak with brass corners. The lock was old-fashioned, the kind that needed a small key. He had thrown the key away after the funeral. He thought he had, but maybe it was still somewhere in the apartment. In the back of a drawer, forgotten. He spent 2 hours searching. Found it finally in an old envelope mixed with tax documents and Finn's birth certificate. The key was small, tarnished. It fit perfectly into the lock. Inside the box were documents, papers, things that made no sense. At the very top was an identification card with Astrid's photo, but the name read Callista Hale, occupation senior analyst, Sterling Global Foundation. Clinton sat on the floor, his back against the bed, and stared at the card. This was real. This was actually real. His wife had been living a double life. She had lied to him about who she was, what she did, everything. Finn appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Dad, is Mom still alive? The question broke something in Clinton's chest. He looked at his son, at the hope and confusion in those dark eyes. No, buddy. Mom's still gone. I just found some of her old things. Oh. Finn's small shoulders slumped. I thought maybe. Because you look really sad and really surprised. Like when you found her wedding ring behind the couch. Clinton set the ID card down, held out his arms. Finn came to him. Crawled into his lap even though he was getting too big for it. Clinton held him, felt the warmth of his son's small body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. I miss her too, Finn whispered. I know, buddy, I know. The next morning, Clinton called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. He took Finn to school, then drove to the Sterling Global Foundation offices downtown. The building was glass and steel, 30 stories of corporate power. He felt out of place walking through the lobby in his worn jacket and work boots. The receptionist was polite, but firm. No, he could not see Miss Sterling without an appointment. No, he could not wait in the lobby. No, she could not give him any information about former employees. Clinton was about to leave when an older man in an expensive suit emerged from the elevators. He glanced at Clinton, did a double take, then walked over. You're the delivery driver from last night. Yes, I'm Otis Rispin. I was Callista Hale's attorney. He lowered his voice. We should talk, not here. They went to a coffee shop 3 blocks away. Otis ordered black coffee, waited until they were seated in a corner booth before speaking. Adelaide Sterling called me this morning, told me what happened, told me about you. What do you know about Kalista? Clinton asked. I know she was about to blow open the biggest corruption scandal in Sterling Foundation history. I know she had evidence that Silas Dermott, the chairman of the board, was embezzling millions from international aid programs and funneling money through shell companies. I know she came to me with documents, recordings, everything we needed to take him down. Otis paused, his expression grim. And I know that 2 weeks before we were supposed to file the report, she disappeared. And then I heard about a fire in an apartment across town. A woman named Astrid Constance died. I didn't make the connection. Why didn't you investigate? I tried, but the evidence Kalista gave me vanished. My office was broken into, the files were gone. Without her and without the documents, I had nothing. Otis leaned forward. If you have anything she left behind, anything at all, it could be the key to reopening this case. Clinton thought about the wooden box, about the ID card, about what else might be inside. I need to check something first. He drove home, pulled the box down again, emptied it completely. At the bottom, wrapped in cloth, was a small USB drive. Clinton did not own a computer. He borrowed one from his neighbor, an older woman who used it to video call her grandchildren. He plugged in the USB drive, his heart pounding. The drive contained one video file. He clicked it. Astrid's face filled the screen. She looked tired, scared. The video quality was grainy, recorded on a phone. Behind her was the apartment they'd shared. The one she died in. Clinton, her voice made his throat close. If you're watching this, I'm probably dead. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I lied to you. My real name is Callista Hale. I worked for Sterling Global Foundation investigating financial crimes. I found something big. Silas Dermott is stealing from programs meant to help people, children, families in crisis, millions of dollars. I have proof. I gave it to my lawyer, Otis Rispin. But they know I know. There are men following me. I can't go to the police because I don't know who's involved. I can't leave because they'll find me. I'm going to try to meet with Adelaide Sterling tomorrow, show her everything, hope she can protect me. But if I don't make it, please make sure this gets out. Make sure Finn knows I loved him. Make sure he knows I was trying to do the right thing. The video ended. Clinton played it again and again. Her voice, her face, the way she twisted her wedding ring when she was nervous. She had loved him. She had loved Finn. But she had also been terrified. Hunted. Alone. He called Otis Rispin. 2 days later, Clinton sat in a small office with Otis and a fire investigator named Marcus Webb. Webb had worked the case 3 years ago, filed the report about faulty wiring. But when Otis reached out with new information, he agreed to review the evidence. Webb spread photos across the desk. I remember this fire. Weird things about it. The burn pattern was too concentrated, too hot. The wiring story never quite added up. But there was no proof of accelerants, no obvious signs of arson. The landlord had a history of safety violations, so we went with the easy answer. What changed? Clinton asked. I pulled the original samples we took from the scene, had them retested with newer methods. Webb tapped one photo. There were traces of an incendiary device. Someone set that fire deliberately. They knew what they were doing. Professional job. Clinton's hands clenched into fists. She was murdered. Yes. By who? Webb looked at Otis. Otis looked at Clinton. Silas Dermott has the resources and the motive. But proving it is another matter. He's powerful, connected. We need more than suspicion. Clinton stood. Then let's get more. He thought Adelaide Sterling would refuse to see him. Instead, her assistant called that afternoon, asked him to come to the mansion at 8 that evening. Clinton arrived to find the gates already open, the driveway lit. Adelaide herself answered the door. No security guards in sight. She led him to a study lined with books and overlooking a garden where lights twinkled in the trees. She poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed him one, drank hers in a single swallow. I loved Kalista like a sister. Adelaide's voice was raw, unguarded in a way Clinton had never heard from her. She came to work for me fresh out of graduate school. Brilliant, determined. She saw patterns no one else could see when she started finding irregularities in the foundation accounts. I told her to dig deeper. I thought I was protecting her. I thought no one would dare touch someone under my protection. She poured another glass. I was wrong. Why didn't you investigate when she disappeared? I did. I hired investigators. They found nothing. Callista Hale simply vanished. I assumed Silas had paid her off, scared her away. I didn't think he'd kill her. I underestimated how desperate he was. Adelaide's hand tightened around the glass. Silas Dermott has been on my board for 15 years. He's respected, connected, untouchable. When I confronted him about the missing money, he denied everything, claimed Kalista had fabricated evidence to cover her own theft. The board believed him. I had no proof, so I let it go. I thought she was alive somewhere, safe. I kept her portrait because I hoped one day she'd come back. Clinton told her about the USB drive, about the video, about the fire investigator's findings. Adelaide's face hardened. Then we finished what she started. Over the next week, Clinton and Adelaide worked with Otis to build a case. The USB drive contained more than just the video. There were spreadsheets, emails, bank records. Kalista had documented everything. She had traced money from Sterling Foundation accounts through 3 shell companies to personal accounts controlled by Silas Dermott. But Silas was watching. Clinton noticed the car first, a black sedan that appeared outside his apartment, outside Finn's school, outside the coffee shop where he met with Otis. He started varying his routes, checking over his shoulder, keeping Finn close. Then the envelope appeared, slipped under his door in the middle of the night. No markings. Inside was a single piece of paper. Drop this or your son is next. Clinton called Adelaide at 2 in the morning. She answered immediately, her voice alert. He told her about the threat. There was a long pause. Bring Finn to my house, both of you, now. Clinton packed a bag, woke his son, drove through empty streets to the Sterling estate. Adelaide had a guest wing prepared. Security stationed at every door. Finn thought it was an adventure, exploring the massive house with wide eyes. Adelaide sat with Clinton in the study. He's desperate. That means we're close. He threatened my son, and he'll do worse if we don't stop him now. Adelaide's voice was steel. Kalista died because she tried to do this alone. We're not going to make that mistake. They went to the press. Otis called a reporter he trusted. A woman named Sarah Chen who specialized in corporate corruption. She came to the Sterling mansion, listened to the whole story, reviewed the evidence. Her eyes went wide. This is massive. This isn't just embezzlement. This is fraud, conspiracy, potentially murder. If you're willing to go on record, we are, Adelaide said. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Front page. Sterling Foundation Board Chairman accused of massive fraud, possible murder. Sarah Chen had done her work well, laying out the evidence, the timeline, the tragic death of Callista Hale. By noon, the police had opened an official investigation. Silas Dermott called Adelaide that afternoon. Clinton was in the study with her when her phone rang. She put it on speaker. You're making a mistake, Adelaide. Silas's voice was smooth, controlled. You're destroying the Foundation's reputation over accusations from a dead con artist. Callista Hale was not a con artist. She was a hero, and you murdered her. I did no such thing. You'll never prove otherwise. We already have. The police are at your office right now with a warrant. There was a long silence. Then, this isn't over. The line went dead. An hour later, Otis called. Silas emptied his office and ran. His car was found at a private airfield. He's gone. Adelaide slammed her fist on the desk. He can't have gotten far. I'll call. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A single line, Sterling Foundation Warehouse District, 1 hour. Come alone, or I start a fire the whole city will see. Clinton read the message over her shoulder. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. But he has evidence. Documents. Something he wants to destroy. If we let him burn it all, this ends. He disappears. We can't prove anything. Adelaide stood, grabbed her coat. I'm going. Not alone. Clinton was already moving toward the door. They took Adelaide's car, drove across the city as the sun set. The warehouse district was industrial. Abandoned buildings and empty lots. Adelaide's phone GPS led them to a massive structure. Dark windows, rusted metal siding. A single light glowed inside. They parked. Clinton insisted on going in first. Adelaide argued, but eventually agreed to stay 5 steps behind. They pushed through a side door, found themselves in a cavernous space filled with old filing cabinets and wooden crates. Silas Dermott stood in the center, surrounded by boxes. He was older than Clinton expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and expensive clothes. He held a gas can in one hand, a lighter in the other. Adelaide, and you brought the delivery driver. How touching. His voice echoed in the empty space. It's over, Silas. The evidence is already with the police. Adelaide's voice was steady. Not all of it. I kept copies. Insurance. But I don't need insurance if there's no one left to testify. He poured gasoline over the boxes, the liquid spreading in dark pools. Clinton saw the gun tucked in Silas's belt, saw the way his hand moved toward it. Clinton had been a delivery driver, a single father, a man who worked hard and kept his head down. But he had also been a soldier once, a long time ago, before Finn was born. Those instincts never quite left. He moved before Silas could draw the weapon, closed the distance in 3 long strides, grabbed Silas's wrist, twisted. The gun fell. Silas swung the gas can, caught Clinton across the face. Clinton tasted blood. Didn't let go. They struggled. The lighter fell, skittered across concrete. Adelaide grabbed it, kicked the gun away. Silas was stronger than he looked, fueled by desperation. He broke free, ran for the boxes, reached for something inside. Police sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through broken windows. Otis had called them, given them the location. Silas froze, turned, looked at Adelaide with something like hate, something like resignation. "You win," he said quietly. "But Callista's still dead. That doesn't change." "No," Adelaide replied. "But her truth lives. That's what she wanted." The police arrested Silas Dermott at the warehouse. They found boxes full of documents he'd been trying to destroy. Backup records of every transaction, every shell company, every stolen dollar. The trial took 6 months. Silas was convicted on 14 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to 35 years. The story dominated news cycles for weeks. Reporters camped outside Clinton's apartment until Adelaide hired security to keep them away. Clinton gave one interview to Sarah Chen, telling Callista's story the way she deserved. Finn asked questions Clinton tried to answer honestly. "Yes, your mother was brave. Yes, she was trying to help people. Yes, bad men hurt her because of it. No, it's not your fault. No, we're safe now." 3 months after the trial ended, Adelaide called Clinton to the mansion. She led him to the foyer, to the wall where Callista's portrait hung. But the nameplate had been changed. Now it read, Astrid Constance Hale, truth teller, hero, beloved. "I had it corrected," Adelaide said. "Both names, the full truth." Clinton stared at the portrait, at his wife's face, at the recognition she'd finally received. "Thank you. There's more." Adelaide handed him an envelope. Inside was a check, more money than Clinton had ever seen. "From the Foundation, for you and Finn. Callista's work saved millions meant for people in crisis. This is the least we can do." Clinton tried to refuse. Adelaide wouldn't hear it. "She died protecting the truth. Let us honor that by protecting her family." The memorial service happened on a Sunday. Small, private, in a garden at the Sterling estate. Just Clinton, Finn, Adelaide, Otis, Sarah Chen, and a few people who had worked with Callista at the Foundation. They planted a tree, a young oak that would grow strong and tall. A plaque beneath it read, "For Callista Hale, who saw what others missed." Finn placed flowers at the base of the tree, white roses that Adelaide said were Callista's favorite. The boy stood there for a long time, his small hand on the trunk, talking quietly to the mother he barely remembered. Clinton watched his son and felt something shift in his chest. Not healing, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. The start of understanding that grief and pride could exist in the same space, that you could mourn someone and celebrate them at the same time. Adelaide stood beside him, her usual armor softened. "I'm opening a new division at the Foundation, dedicated to whistleblower protection and corruption investigation. I'd like to name it after her. She'd like that. And I'd like you to be on the advisory board. Someone who understands what it costs to tell the truth." Clinton looked at her, surprised. "I'm a delivery driver. You're a man who wouldn't let his wife's murder be forgotten. You're a father who protected his son while fighting for justice. That's exactly the perspective we need." He considered it, thought about Finn, about the future, about the kind of world Callista had died trying to create. Okay, 6 months later, Sterling Global Foundation held a ceremony dedicating the Callista Hale Truth and Justice Center. The building was modest compared to Sterling's corporate headquarters, but bright, filled with light and purpose. Young investigators worked at clean desks, following trails of corruption, protecting people who dared to speak up. Clinton brought Finn to the dedication. They stood in the lobby where a second portrait of Callista hung, this one showing her smiling, confident, alive. The nameplate used both her names now. She had been both people, both were real, both mattered. Adelaide gave a speech about courage, about the cost of silence, about the responsibility of those with power to protect those without it. She looked at Clinton when she said it. A brief acknowledgement after the ceremony. Clinton and Finn walked through the building. Finn stopped in front of his mother's portrait, tilted his head, studying it. Did she know she was brave? I think so. She was scared, but she did it anyway. That's what brave means. Do you think she'd be proud of us? Clinton knelt down, looked his son in the eye. I know she would be. Every single day, they went home as the sun set, driving through streets that felt different now, safer somehow. The apartment was still small, still cramped, but it was theirs. Clinton had used some of Adelaide's money to fix the radiator, to buy Finn a proper bed, to put aside savings for college. The rest he donated to organizations Kalista had cared about. That night, after Finn was asleep, Clinton sat at the kitchen table with the wooden box. He'd kept it, along with everything inside. The fake ID, the USB drive, the documents, pieces of a life he hadn't fully known. He ran his fingers over the worn wood, felt the weight of everything it represented. He thought about Astrid, about Kalista, about the woman who had been both. He thought about her courage, her secrets, her sacrifice. He thought about the truth she'd died protecting, now finally free. And he whispered to the empty room, to the ghost of his wife, to the hero the world was finally allowed to see. You're not forgotten anymore, not ever again. Outside, the city hummed with life, people going home, turning on lights, gathering families. Somewhere in that vast sprawl, someone else might be discovering a truth worth fighting for, a wrong worth righting. And maybe, because of Kalista, because of her example, they'd find the courage to speak up. That was her legacy. Not just the corruption she exposed or the money she saved, but the reminder that ordinary people could do extraordinary things, that a single voice could matter, that the truth, no matter how dangerous, was always worth protecting. Clinton closed the box, set it back on the shelf. Tomorrow he'd go to work at the foundation. Tomorrow he'd help other truth-tellers find their courage. Tomorrow he'd continue the work Kalista started. But tonight, he'd simply remember her, both versions of her. The wife who made him laugh and the hero who changed the world. She had been both. She had been everything, and she would never, ever be forgotten.